Welcome to episode 31 of From the Shed End podcast with myself, T-Dot. And as always, I'm joined by Theo. So how are you doing, Theo?
Good, thanks. Good, thanks. Enjoyed the game on Wednesday night, and looking forward to the game on Saturday. Now, I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, not bad, not bad. Obviously, I just want everyone to know this is not the sort of kit that came out this week. I'm not stupid. I'm not paying £200 for a kit that's got graffiti all over it. But no, I'm good. I'm good. Brilliant game. Obviously, Wednesday, like you said, we've got an early kickoff. Saturday. Forgot what day it is, on Saturday against Norwich. So yeah, looking forward to that as well. As always, guys, whoever's listening out there, if you're watching on YouTube live, you can obviously see our social handles at the very bottom of the screen. But if you're not and you're listening on Apple or Spotify, you can follow us on Twitter or Instagram, and at From the Shed End on Twitter and at From the Shed End with underscores between each of the words on Instagram. Again, search for us on YouTube, like, subscribe, comment, all of that stuff as well. We're on there. So yeah, just give us a like, subscribe, and let us know your thoughts. But let's take it straight back to Wednesday. Brilliant game. I think on here, a couple of episodes before, I've been talking a lot about, yes, we're winning games, but it's how we're winning them. And I felt like, albeit against Malmo, what I've been asking for, we actually got to see against Malmo, that sort of pressure, sort of more creativity, a bit more free-flowing football was what I've been expecting from us, and I think we got that. But what was your thoughts on the game?
It was a good game. Yeah, the opponent was Malmo, who probably are a bit weaker than maybe the typical Premier League opposition. But it was a good game. I thought it was. I wanted a 2-0 lead at halftime, which we had, and I was happy with that. And then we could kind of enjoy the second half. Make the substitutions we wanted, but probably we couldn't do that because of the early changes we had to make in that first half. But I think we'll touch on that later. But it was good. I think we dominated the ball. We hardly even let Malmo have I can't even remember a single shot on target. Maybe they had. But yeah, it was just a lot of time we were winning games, but maybe not as comfortably as we like that Southampton game. The two, it was a 3-1 the scoreline, but those two late goals came in the last maybe 5 or 10 minutes. Whereas this game, we got it done quite early, and the second half was good. And I thought Havertz was really, really impressive when he came on. His goal was amazing, and credit to Hudson-Odoi. I thought he was fantastic as well when he came on to replace. I can't remember if he replaced Luke. I think he replaced Werner with the second substitution, and that amazing run down the left wing to set up Havertz for the goal was brilliant. I actually wanted to talk about Tiago Silva because he didn't play against Brentford. He was rested against Brentford. I think he just came back from international duty, so he couldn't be included in the squad for that game. But his performance was fantastic. I mean, the Malmo strikers just didn't really, put any pressure on him, which allowed him to almost play like an NFL quarterback, I felt. And he was just pinging these balls across the pitch. And that's how he set up Christensen for his goal. And on multiple occasions, he was pinging these balls, finding Havertz, finding Lukaku, finding Werner. And it was fantastic. And, I think Rudiger is also capable of that. And it kind of reminded me a bit of how David Luiz used to play, just lobbing those long balls across the pitch, finding one of the strikers. But overall, it was a great performance. And 4-0 on the score sheet is always a good result. It's just a shame that Juventus managed to score quite late on in their game. If otherwise, it would have been the perfect match day.
Yeah, it was a good game, and I've said on here before that creative side of the game just hasn't been there. We spoke about it on here before, but to see, like you just mentioned, Tiago Silva having free reign, being able to just ping balls, and setting up Christensen for his first goal as well, as a Chelsea player, which it seems like it's almost impossible because you think how long he's been at the club, and I think he got his debut at 17. He's been there for a while now, so I think he's 24 now. So to go that long without a goal, but it was a good goal. I mean, that's a goal that some strikers would be seriously proud of. I think to be able to, the way the ball comes in, it's almost slightly behind him a little bit, and he still manages to get it from behind and put it in. So I think it's a striker's finish, and I was surprised, if I'm honest, and I know I mentioned it offline around the lineup. I think I would have definitely rested Lukaku, obviously even more so now, but I would have expected maybe a Saul Niguez to start. I think he was someone that I expected to see, maybe Kai Havertz starting as well. So, in hindsight, obviously, you want your best players out there, which is understandable, but there's going to be Thomas Tuchel's just said it in his press conference. Players do get tired. They've got international football to think about, Nations League. But then you've also got to consider that if they are getting tired, there are games where you can rest them. And I feel like Malmo would have been a perfect example of that. But it's hindsight, it's one of those things. But in terms of Malmo, I spoke about them I think I gave them a bit too much credit in the last episode, because I think they had two shots on target. I think maybe one in the second half, one in the first. I think they had about 27% possession. They just did, like you said, it didn't make any, anything difficult for our centre backs or even for Mendy as well. But I thought overall I was impressed with just how we played the game, not, finding that pocket of space, pressuring the team. And again, I'll say it again, I know it's Malmo, so I expected an easy game for us, but just to be able to do that shows that we can do it. And regardless of the opposition, that's how I'd like to see Chelsea playing every single week. Regardless, obviously you don't get that much time on the ball in Premier League games. Malmo made it a lot easier for us, but I think there's still opportunity to play at that level, which is what I'm kind of looking for in Chelsea. So I was impressed. I was impressed with Jorginho. I thought he was brilliant. Christensen, as I've mentioned already, not just for the goal, but just what he does. Like we're lucky to have him. When you think about the fact of he's been at the club since he's 17, he's a brilliant defender. He's had question marks over him before, and I think he's answered a lot of those critics in the way that he's performed the last 2 or 3 seasons. So for him to do that as well, for Hudson-Odoi coming on, I thought he played brilliantly, and he's him and Havertz are going to have to step up now, because obviously the injuries to Lukaku and Werner, we're looking at those kind of players to come in and do a job now. So I was impressed with the goals. I was impressed with the 2 penalties, Jorginho getting man of the match, hopefully Ballon d'Or as well. It's a brilliant game for us.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on Christensen, because he was fantastic again. And I think he's that player that only rival fans are starting to realise now that actually he's a very, very good player. They never used to rate him, but I think he's got 42 clean sheets in his last 52 starts or something like that. And I think he's only conceded in six games in the last 203 days. I don't really like to look at stats, but if you look at stats for a defender and you look at clean sheets and you actually then compare that to the game he plays, you can put 2 and 2 together, you realise he's a fantastic player. And I remember that first game when I think he came on after Gary Cahill got sent off against Burnley, I think on one of in Conte's second season. He came on and he played in the back 3, and he scored in that game, and it was actually offside. And I thought, if he just carries on playing like this, he'll score for fun, and as a centre back. But in the end, he hasn't scored. That was his first Chelsea goal on Wednesday, and he deserves it. He really does deserve it. In terms of the lineup, which you mentioned, I think there were a few surprises on the team sheet. I wouldn't have started Lukaku. I wouldn't have started maybe even a Kante. I thought Tuchel maybe really wanted to win that game comfortably, and it came at a cost of losing 2 players to injury, which really could have been avoided. We could have easily started Havertz. We could have easily started Hudson-Odoi. Mentioned even Saunaguez could have started that one. We mentioned in the previous episode we'd have liked to see maybe Barkley start that game potentially. So
if he's not in the Champions League squad. I was thinking this the other day.
I think he came. Did he not come off the bench against Juventus? I'm thinking so.
Possibly he did.
And we have these crazy long big benches in the European games, and I think if you're a homegrown player, you're automatically in the squad. So I think but I think he'll play a part maybe on Saturday or in a cup game on Wednesday.
Yeah.
But we mentioned we weren't winning any penalties this season. We got 2 on Wednesday. And it was nice to see Jorginho. Even though I love the hop, skip, and the little jump, it does, play with your heart a bit. So it was nice to see him almost put a bit more, power into that ball and just smash it into the back of the net.
You had a good view, didn't you? I think where you were sitting, you had a pretty decent view of the penalty, which was good.
The second penalty, it was quite nice. I was directly aligned with it. So I shared that on the Instagram page if anyone who's listening wants to go check that out. But I think it was nice to see him kind of change his penalty technique a little. And I think I read another stat. I think every single one of our defenders has scored this season except for Azpi and Malang Sarr. So our defenders are scoring, whether it's because we're playing with a back 5 or whether it's just the strikers aren't getting the service they need to score. But they're doing the job at the back. They're scoring and they're keeping clean sheets. So hopefully that carries on as well. But But yeah, it was a good performance. But I do agree. I'd like to see those kind of score lines a bit more frequently across the season, rather than 1-0s or keeping it quite late in the game and scoring in quite late on in the second half.
I know. We mentioned Mendy last week or last episode. It feels like last week, but yeah, 10 clean sheets and 89% save percentage since October 2020 is above Edison, Courtois, Neuer, Alisson in that sort of bracket as well. So just goes to show how what we said on the last episode, how crucial it is that he's in goal. 10 clean sheets in the space of a year in the Champions League is a record to be proud of.
Yeah, he's fantastic. I think someone could. It must be on Twitter, some kind of thread with all the statistics and records he's broken since joining Chelsea, because the amount of clean sheet, I think it's since he's joined Chelsea, he's got over 30 clean sheets in 50 something games, or maybe, so he's fantastic. And I think he's only behind Petr Cech and Pepe Reina, I think, in terms of keeping clean sheets in when he first joined the Premier League. But a fantastic keeper. We mentioned it, I think, in the previous episode. We're losing him in January to the African Cup of Nations. It's going to be difficult, but we've got Kepa. I trust Kepa for that. But at the same time, having Mendy in a squad and bringing him last summer was a fantastic acquisition and a great bit of business from Petr Cech.
Yeah, definitely brings that sort of confidence in the back line as well. But you mentioned the two key players that we lost at the expense of a 4-0 victory. Lukaku, Timo Werner as well. Let's start with Lukaku, because I think it was, obviously he was at the game, but watching it on TV it was a bad tackle. It was a bad tackle. It was one of those ones where you almost knew instantly he wasn't going to carry on, and you almost instantly thought that's about a 4 to 6 window of return. And because he not only does he roll his ankle, but it's the fact that the player's almost landed full body weight on the ankle as well. So it looked bad, and it was a bad one. So is it going to be a miss? Because obviously Tuchel just said in the press conference before we came on that he's been basically worn down. He's played a lot of international football. He wants to be the top dog at Chelsea, which is all good things. But is it a case that this has probably come at a good time for Lukaku, that he's out the picture for a bit, gets to recover, and we can hopefully bring him back and he can find his scoring form again?
I think Lukaku is that player that wants to play every single minute of every single game, whether it's Nations League, whether it's Premier League, whether it's group stage of the Champions League. But at the same time, I think Tuchel was the one who did mention he was tired. He was mentally tired, I think, from drained from all the games he's played, and probably he's travelled across Europe as well with Champions League and with the Belgium national team. I don't want to say the injury is a good thing, because it's looking like it could be a month out injured, which means potentially missing those important games, Newcastle away, potentially Man United at home, these type of games which we need him for. But at the same time, Norwich at home, Southampton in the cup, are type of games that we can still be winning without Lukaku. But at the same time, I did mention when we first signed him back in the summer, he's that player that can score us 20 goals a season. And if he's missing these type of important phases of the season against relatively easy opposition, automatically, the likes of Salah, the likes of Vardy, the likes of Aubameyang will start scoring, and he's slowly he's going to miss out on this game time and not get as many goals as them. So I think personally, it's going to be a bit of a blow for him individually, because he wants to be that top dog, like you said. He wants to be scoring every game. But at the same time, if he hasn't scored, I think, in his last 7 games for Chelsea, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So so it's going to maybe a bit of a rest for him, and hopefully he can come back stronger. It's a shame, because he would have scored in that Malmo game 100%. Stayed on the pitch. Yeah, he looked really sharp in the opening 20 minutes. And you mentioned the tackle. I thought it was quite malicious, the tackle. It was quite an inexperienced tackle. It
was almost a scissors, the scissors tackle. It was one of those. It wasn't as dramatic as that, but it was definitely lucky that he got a yellow. He could have easily got red for that, because it was, there was no ball. It was all player. So
no ball, no ball or player from behind. And you mentioned the scissor action and landing quite awkwardly on his ankle. It's going to be a blow to have him out, but at the same time, I'm hoping Havertz steps up now.
Yeah, and I think Thomas Tuchel's just mentioned the next 2 games, which obviously Norwich and Southampton in the cup, and obviously I think we've got Newcastle away then, haven't we? After that, so I think I mean, I don't think they'll rush him back. I don't think he'll be rushed back. I think knowing the importance that we're going to need him, especially around that sort of period when we don't have Mendy, which is coming up obviously a lot closer now. I think we'll leave as long as we've got. I mean, we've got enough players in that position who can play that false nine, and Kai Havertz. I'm not sure about Timo Werner. I think it's hamstring, so could be out for a bit longer. But I do think when Lukaku comes back, I think he's going to be. He needed this rest. I think you think about the Euros, you think about the fact when Belgium went out of the Euros, he went straight back to Inter Milan. He was training there, then moved to Chelsea, started with Chelsea, went to internationals, came back, played for Chelsea, went back to the internet. So he's had a lot. He's never really had a rest. And I do kind of get what Tuchel means in terms of, he has just been constantly playing football. But then there are moments, again, I'm going to say Malmo, you could rest him. Norwich, potentially, give him 60 minutes, bring him off, rest him in the cup against Southampton as well. So there are moments where we can do things as a club as well to stop that, prevent that from happening. And I think Malmo is a good example of that. But Timo Werner, is he going to be missed? And I don't mean that in the worst way possible, but I mean in terms of, because I mean he missed a sitter. Let's be honest, he missed a sitter at Malmo early on in the game. I think it was the first bit of attack from Chelsea.
Yeah, he missed the sitter. Then Lukaku missed the sitter against Brentford, but was offside. I think it happens to the best strikers across Europe. He will be missed. I think Werner, we've spoken about him. Having a Timo Werner against Norwich, you're going to miss his pace, and you're going to miss the way he's able to kind of take defenders, out of the game and create space for whether it's a Havertz, whether it's a Mount, whether it's a Loftus-Cheek. And he will be missed. And I think Tuchel really values him at the moment. I think he started the last 3 games. He started against Southampton. He started against Brentford. He started against Malmo. So he is rated now by Tuchel. And I do really want to say he's going to be missed. And it's quite a tricky one because now that leaves us with Pulisic still injured. I think the reason Tuchel didn't want to put a date on the return for Lukaku and Werner is because he made that mistake with Pulisic. He said he'd be back after the international break, whereas he isn't. He didn't assess it properly. So I think he's been quite cautious now and, saying, well, we'll have him back in a few weeks or we'll have him back after the Newcastle game. He doesn't want to make that mistake.
It's all speculation, like you said.
It's all speculation, yeah. So I would have liked to see Pulisic back fit for this period when we don't have Werner and Lukaku, because I think after potentially Werner, Pulisic's arguably our pacier strike, attacking player. But I'm confident that Havertz will step up now. He scored a brilliant goal against Malmo, and that's what we want from him. And I think something that we saw a lot at Leverkusen, we still haven't really properly seen yet at Chelsea, is his aerial ability as well. He's got a great head. He's tall. I think he's over 1.90 m. He's very, very tall. Yeah. And I do want to see him, score a few headed goals. I think he hit the crossbar against Real Madrid with a header last season. So I think, we'll miss Lukaku and Lukaku's heading ability. Hopefully Havertz can make up for it. And then I'd love to see a lineup on against Norwich of Havertz up front with potentially Mount and Loftus-Cheek right behind him. I think that would be interesting, but I still think maybe Ziyech will start that one on Saturday. I think Tuchel did talk about Ziyech a little in his press conference, saying had an amazing pre-season, but he's still kind of struggling with a shoulder injury maybe, so that's why he hasn't been performing to the level he's used to. But we've got the depth, we've got the options. We just maybe can't afford another injury in that position.
Yeah, it was interesting to hear him talk about Hakim Ziyech as well, because I think he has been unlucky. You think about last season, very similar, I think, against Brighton, I think in the pre-season game there, he got injured, I think, as well, which hampered the start of his season. And then again, there's the Super Cup this season, same thing happens again. So he has been hampered and hindered with injuries, but yeah, he's got to do what, like Thomas Tuchel just said, work for his performance, his time on the pitch. And, it was interesting, he mentioned around Kai Havertz, obviously not naming any names, but I'm assuming he meant Timo Werner and Lukaku were ahead of him in terms of on training. And, Kai Havertz being almost third on that list, and he's got to work for his place. I think now's the perfect time to see Kai Havertz shine. I think he will. I think we've seen glimpses of it. Obviously, we talk about Champions League, but even when he's played in the Premier League as well, he's done really well. He's a good player. I don't maybe because we're just watching it from a match perspective. We're not on the training pitch every day, so we're not there every day to see what's happening. But I just think he deserves his chance now. It's a shame about Pulisic as well. I agree. I think he's the one who brings that pace. But I do agree with you. I think Loftus-Cheek playing in that more forward role with Mason Mount, because Loftus-Cheek's got a bit of pace about him. He's strong as well.
Yeah.
He's good on the ball. He can take players on. And I think against the Norwich, I mean, that's perfect. That's perfect for Kai Havertz as well. That link up will be really good. So it'll be interesting to see what Thomas Tuchel does. I'm excited about it as well. We're going to speak about Norwich in a minute, but I wanted to talk about Cesar Azpilicueta, aka Dave. New contract. It's almost over the line. I think it's a new contract till 2023 with the option to extend for a further year. It's a no-brainer. Surely it makes sense.
Makes complete sense. Not asking for ridiculous wages like someone else. He's the captain. I think he'll happily even maybe accept a pay cut to stay at Chelsea. He's that type of player. And I mentioned it over the summer. Maybe he's not playing as many minutes as he used to, because he's maybe switching it up with Reece James as the wing back, Hudson-Odoi at times, rotating with all the other centre backs. But what he gives his team is that leadership. He's a presence in the dressing room. We saw it with John Terry in his final season. Even though he wasn't playing, he was there in the dressing room, almost giving the second team talk after the manager. I think that's what Azpilicueta is capable of doing for maybe the next 2-3 years to come. So I'm really glad. I'm really glad to see him sign a new deal if he is which I'm sure he is going to sign it. And you don't really see it. I still think his performances are really, really good. He hasn't really dropped in his performance. I think he's. I don't want to say something silly. I think he's 31 now, maybe 32. I'm not too sure on his
32.
age. 32, yeah. And it's that age now where you're slowly starting to think, okay, as a centre back, maybe your level slowly drops. But I think he's remained incredibly consistent with his performances and a valuable squad player. So I'm really, really pleased to see him, sign that extension.
I think as well, one of the things that I think we will see eventually is maybe he moves into that centre back role a bit more as opposed to a right wing back or a right back. I think the legs have gone, but the brain's still there. And I think that's what I can see probably happening a bit more. I think having that experience, like you mentioned, with John Terry, even up to maybe a Gary Cahill when John Terry left as well, having that experience there, I can see him playing for another 2 years when he's 34 or maybe going on to 35. I think he can play that Tiago Silva role because he's got that defensive mindset, and he's got a football brain, which I think is what has kept him in the game for so long. You look at like a Branislav Ivanovic, who I think at this point in his career, I think potentially left Chelsea at this point, around sort of middle of 30, early 30s. So he reminds me of that sort of Tiago Silva mold where he can potentially play up till 35. And like you mentioned, the experience around Chelsea will be definitely valuable for the other centre backs that are sort of a Christensen, Chalobah, those kind of players that we've got there as well. So it's a no-brainer for me. Looking forward to seeing 2 more seasons at least of him as well. And by then, I'm assuming again, they're thinking, Tiago Silva's moved on at that point. So he kind of replaces that Tiago Silva role as well, coming in, filling in for cup games or, coming on as that sub to just see the game out. He can do that as well. And he's never really injured. He never misses a game when you think about,
that's true.
His injury record's impeccable. So good to see that. That's
still playing regularly for Spain at the moment as well. So he's really valued by Luis Enrique as well. And I think something that I don't think he maybe got as much credit for, but I think he really helped maybe a player like Tiago Silva settle in speaking French. And I think Silva speaks French and doesn't speak English. So that was really good to see the two of them play centre back together and almost have that communication by able to speak French. And at the time, I think Zuma was maybe the third centre back. So have those 3 defenders speaking French together, I think really helped him maybe settle in and, have that kind of person he could communicate with on the pitch when it came to giving orders and tactics. So credit to him there as well.
Yeah, definitely. 100% makes sense. Let's move over to tomorrow, 12:30. I had to just double check to make sure it's Friday then. Yeah, tomorrow, 12:30. Chelsea versus Norwich. It's been a long week. Chelsea versus Norwich. What's your thoughts? Top versus bottom? Give me your thoughts.
We should be winning. We should be keeping a clean sheet. We should be scoring at least 2 or 3. I mean, no disrespect to Norwich, but based on how the season's gone, I think it's a game we should be winning. I haven't really watched much of Norwich this season, and the times I did watch them, their defence looked very leaky, and they conceded a fair few. I do really like Daniel Farke. I think he's a brilliant manager. I like the players that he brings in. Tuchel clearly really has a good relationship with him. I don't really agree with what he's been saying about Gilmore recently, though. I don't want to be developing players that don't belong to us. I mean, I think anyone who watches football knows how good Gilmore is, and I think he's better than any of Norwich's midfielders. No disrespect to them, but it's one of those games I'm excited to go to at 12:30. Mark, it's one of those games I think I'll be walking to Stamford Bridge thinking it's going to be goals, and it's going to be goals for Chelsea, and not. I think we've got a very good home record against Norwich as well. But yeah, I'm expecting a very different 11 to the one that played Wednesday. There's going to be not too different because of the injuries, I suppose, but it's going to be maybe a similar one to the lineup that finished the game against Malmo. But yeah, I think it's a good game to have at this period because we've had a tricky opening run to the season with Liverpool, Tottenham, Arsenal, City, Juventus as well. That Juventus game came quickly after the City one, but this is now a game where you kind of you're able to almost afford to have those injuries to maybe play those players that wouldn't play as regularly, but you can still count on them to get the goals and maybe the performances you need. So I'm looking forward to it, and I think it's going to be, I want to say, a comfortable win, especially after what I saw on Wednesday.
I can't say anything but a win. I think it's a perfect time to play Norwich. I agree with you around Daniel Farke being a good manager. I think he's always out of his depth when it comes to the Premier League. I think he suits Championship football. I think he's just out of his depth when it comes to the Premier League. But I think I want to take what we did in Malmo. I want to see exactly the same against Norwich. I want that same creative, almost that freedom, almost playing like I mentioned before in a previous episode, a Liverpool. I want to see that intensity. I want to see that pressing from the very moment we kick off. I want to see that, and I think, and why I asked about will we miss sort of Werner and Lukaku, I think taking Lukaku out might give us that more energy. As mad as it sounds, will give us that energy up front with Kai Havertz playing the false nine, or whoever's playing the false nine. I think it'd be Havertz, but if we play that false nine, it just gives us something else to work with. It's a different option, and I think playing Lukaku sometimes, I'm not criticizing him or Tuchel for the tactics, but I think it kind of takes away that kind of pace of the game that we can sometimes show. So yeah, I can't see us losing this one. I think you're right. I think it'll be the same sort of team that ended the Malmo game in terms of how we're going to play. Again, I'd love to, like you said, I'd love to see Loftus-Cheek and Mason Mount supporting Havertz in that sort of attacking roles as well. Maybe Reece James right wing back. I think mix it up. Left wing back's always a tricky one because as much as I love Ben Chilwell and he's come into great form, I think this game would suit Alonso a bit more. I think I'd like to see Alonso playing in this role. Defensively, I think Chilwell's brilliant and probably more suited. But I think if we're on the front foot and we're trying to to get a goal or a couple goals against Norwich, then I think Alonso is the one that we should be playing in that role. But it's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to it. The only downside to the weekend is if we do lose, it ruins the whole weekend, which I'm not expecting us to lose. So let's hope not. But early kickoffs are never easy, and I think it's less preparation time. It's less. We're at home, so it's good. But I just think early kickoffs are always difficult, and I think the games where you expect to win, you sometimes come up against big hurdles, and fingers crossed this isn't one of those games. But you just look at Norwich, they've been struggling all season. They're due a win at some point, and it is going to come at some point for them. So let's just hope it's not against us. But I agree with you in terms of the games that we've got coming up now. Obviously, I can see a few changes coming for the Carabao Cup in a week. I think that's on the Tuesday. I think dates are all messed up, but I think it's on the 26th. Then we've obviously got Newcastle, which is going to be tough. You think about the change, and obviously Steve Bruce has gone now, change of ownership. There's talk about big players, Dombele and all these other players going there as well. So that's going to be a tough game as well. So I think we've got to look at securing 3 points here, but getting it comfortable, doing a comfortable, fashion of getting those 3 points rather than leaving it till the 88th minute to try and get a winner. I want to see us dominate the game, very much like Malmo. 2-0 cushion before half time, go in there and bring on some players that we can bring on a sort of Malang Sarr, or bring on a Ross Barkley, get them some minutes as well, because I'd imagine they'll feature in the cup as well. But the thing about Gilmour, I think it's such a strange thing to come out and say. I think fair enough, you don't want to sort of nurture youngsters, but you've got him on loan, he's yours for the season. That's your job, to nurture players regardless of whether they're yours or they've come in on loan. I can see him fitting back into Chelsea next season. I think regardless of how much he plays at Norwich this season, it looks like they're going to get relegated, and we've seen what happened to Loftus-Cheek when he was at Fulham. Bit of a different scenario because he was actually playing, but they got relegated and he's now back in the first team. So I can see the same for Billy Gilmour as well.
Yeah, and Tuchel didn't exactly say no to the question he was asked in the press conference, would you recall him in January? So it's kind of feels almost like Chinese whispers out right now over there. He's actually got it in his head if he's going to call him back, or maybe he's going to have a conversation with Daniel Farke after the game about Gilmour's development and what he expects from him. And I think the other one's Brandon Williams, who hasn't featured maybe as much as well, and it's the same kind of situation as Gilmour. He doesn't want to nurture a player that doesn't really belong to him, or maybe he's already planning for the Championship next season and the squad he's going to have in the Championship. So you don't know. But you mentioned a 2-0 cushion at halftime. That'd be great. Just to enjoy the second half, no stress. But then now you're putting doubts in my head about these 12:30 kickoffs against weaker opposition. You don't want to get too confident. We finished a game quite late on Wednesday. The players would have recovered Thursday. They would have trained today. So it doesn't give them too much time to prep for this game. That's another thing that I'm slightly worried about, whereas Norwich would have had the whole week to prep.
Yeah.
But that's why we have the depth in the squad. That's why we should be making some changes in the lineup. I mentioned it previously, I'd love to see Mount and Loftus-Cheek play behind Havertz, but I think it's going to be maybe Ziyech and Hudson-Odoi, with potentially Loftus-Cheek and maybe Kovacic, who didn't feature against Malmo in midfield. And then a very, I want to say different side that will feature in the Cup on Wednesday against Southampton. But next 3 games in the league, Norwich, Newcastle and Burnley, all in the relegation zone at the moment. I don't think any of them has a win. So it's games like that where you're like 9 points or nothing in a way. We need to be getting those 9 points. So
I'm saying nothing.
I mean, Newcastle, with Newcastle, it's going to be a scary one. We have the best of records at St James's Park. We'll see about that one, and who their manager will be in the dugout for that game as well. It's going to be quite an interesting one as well. Could be Eddie Howe, I think. I think he's the favourite at the moment.
It's not a bad shout at all. It's not a bad shout. What's your prediction for Norwich? You've avoided the prediction, but what's your prediction?
Yeah, usually that's the first thing I say. But I did it on the app yesterday, so I'll just say what I put on the app. I put 3-0 Chelsea with Loftus-Cheek as the first goal scorer. I think if he plays a bit higher up the pitch, he'll get that goal, the opening goal.
Yeah, I'm going to go for another 4-0. I know it sounds ambitious, but I think we're playing Norwich at the best time. I think I think the changes will actually complement how we need to play. And like I mentioned, around that sort of on the front foot attacking sort of momentum, I think a lot of that will show now that Lukaku isn't in the picture. And we'll see a different Chelsea squad. It's forced changes again, very similar to what happened at Malmo in the second half or the early first half as well. So the forced changes, I think, will steer the team on, hopefully, to get 4 goals. I'm not going to give goal scorers, but I do think there'll be a penalty, and it will be for Chelsea as well. So yeah, let's see how things go.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. It's going to be one of those games, I think. As I said, walking to Stamford Bridge, you're going to expect there to be goals. You're going to expect them, as you said, not having Lukaku puts, I think it'll be a bit more of a free-flowing Chelsea, because when Lukaku does play, you almost like he's the magnet. You want him to get the ball. You want to feed him the ball. He wants the ball. So maybe he allows players like Mount, Loftus-Cheek, Werner to almost play around Lukaku. But now that he's not in the picture, like you mentioned, all those other players will just have, a bit more, I want to say freedom when they get the ball to do what they want to do. Maybe, Hudson-Odoi is going to be able to play his football. And, he's very capable of doing that, like we saw against Malmo, when he gets the ball, drive it up the pitch. But I'm excited for it. It's going to be a good game.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Just before we wrap up, I thought obviously we can't do this episode without mentioning Matthew Harden, who obviously big contribution to Chelsea in the early sort of 90s. Him and Ken Bates were big parts of why Chelsea's where it is today. So 25-year anniversary. I think it was 1996. I think the sort of tragic plane crash. So he was again big part of the rebuild of not just Chelsea but Stamford Bridge as well. So 25 years seems like a long time, but couldn't really not do this episode and not mention Matthew Harden.
Great. Definitely worth mentioning, and it's a shame as well. I think it's the first time we didn't put a picture of him in on the front of the program. I saw on Twitter.
Yeah,
we've got Ben Chilwell this time, and I think every time around this period when we have a game, we always have Matthew Harding on the front of the program to remember him. But maybe it's a decision that the editing team have taken this year, and it's out of our hands. But definitely worth mentioning, and he played a great part in the history of the club.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm sure tomorrow, there'll be a lot of vocal Chelsea fans paying tribute to him, and obviously Jimmy Greaves as well, who I think his funeral's been taking place today as well. So there's a lot of obviously to cheer about, but obviously a lot more to celebrate in some ways than one as well. So as always, guys, if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, as I mentioned at the start of the episode, at From the Shed End on Twitter. And on Instagram, it's at From the Shed End with underscores between each of the words. On YouTube, it's From the Shed End. I don't think I've missed any, but if I haven't or have, then just From the Shed End and everything, you'll find us. Like and subscribe on YouTube because we're very low on subscribers. They're slowly creeping up, but we need them to be a bit more. So make it worthwhile for me and Theo to spend our Friday afternoons and midweek talking about Chelsea. So like and subscribe on YouTube. And as always, Theo, thanks for joining me, and also the work you do on Instagram as well. Chelsea Journal as well. You've done a lot of those in the past as well for the Champions League Journal. So
writing articles for the Champions League Journal, publishing on Instagram. If you want to give us a follow there, we got, I think, our video got reshared by Talk Chelsea, which is one of the biggest Chelsea accounts. So that was great to see. Yeah, but definitely drop us a follow to get all that content on your feeds.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll be back next week in high spirits after a good weekend. Top teams lose apart from Chelsea. We beat Norwich 4-0 or 3-0 if you're Theo. We'll be back next week with episode 32 of From the Shed End podcast. But for now, this is episode 31 from the Shed End podcast. Myself, Tito, and Theo. Thank you for joining us.